Welcome to the Headshots Podcast with Dr. Nicole, a 1-hour conversation on mental wellness to improve your look and outlook. During the show, we will talk about a variety of topics which impact you from the inside out. Each show is designed with 3 parts: lights, camera, and action. In our lights segment, we will shed light on a topic around a mental health concern. In our camera segment, we will focus on that mental health concern, educate, and raise awareness. And in our action segment, we will give 3 steps to improve your look and your outlook. So join us for the Headshots Podcast with Dr. Nicole. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Headshots Podcast with Dr. Nicole, a 1-hour conversation on mental health to improve your look and your outlook. I'm Dr. Nicole Johnson, licensed counselor, assistant professor. I'm also an addiction specialist and a trauma-informed professional. I want to thank all of my live viewers, and I want to thank everyone who is watching us in the replay. So let's talk. Tonight all is our final night for this season. We planned 8 episodes, and I can't believe it that 8 episodes have come and gone so fast. So this is the last night of our first season of the Headshots Podcast, and I'm so excited about our topic tonight. So let's dive in. We're sitting here at the end of this year. 2020 has, as we've been talking about all through the podcast, the different topics, that 2020 has been a year like no other. It has totally been unprecedented. And most people at the end of the year, they take some time, they take some moments to really think about the year as a whole. So tonight's topic is a time of reflection. And I want to spend some time talking about the practice of reflection and how reflection can help you process 2020 and prepare for 2021. So let's dive in. So the light we want to shed on this topic around reflection is the importance of reflection and how reflection can really benefit us. So the lights we want to shine a light on the topic or the question, what is reflection and how can it help me develop my emotional intelligence? Now, I just said a word that some people may not be aware of. They may have heard it thrown around, may have seen a book about it, may have seen a New York bestseller about emotional intelligence, but really, what is it? Emotional intelligence is the capacity of an individual to recognize their own emotions and the emotions of others. So the first thing about emotional intelligence is, do I know what I'm feeling? And do I know what the other person on the other side of my conversation is feeling? Then am I able to discern between them and between the emotions and label them properly? Because a lot of times I may be feeling something, but if I'm misreading a message from someone on the other side of the conversation, it may cause the conversation to go in a direction that I really don't want it to go to. And then how can I use that information to guide what I think, what I feel, what I behave? How do I manage it? How do I manage my emotions when I don't know what I'm feeling? I can't manage what I don't understand. And so emotional intelligence is really a development that we all need so that we are better able to interact with those around us, whether it's families, whether it's friends, whether it's loved ones, whether it's our children, whether it's those that we work with. It helps us in all of our relationships. And so how can reflection help propel us in the development of our emotional intelligence? How can our ability to reflect, to think back, to consider some things propel us into being better able to know ourselves and to know those around us? So In layman's terms, when you are emotionally intelligent, you recognize the connection between your thoughts, your feelings, and how this influences your behavior. And underneath all of this is your emotions. Like, what am I feeling? So, let me give you some examples of how reflection is important, or how our emotions impact the way that we respond to people. So, I'm the type of person that when I'm tired, my family can attest to this, and some of my friends, I talk very short, meaning I am short tempered and I'm a little bit more irritable if I'm really, really tired. And that may be the same if anyone out there, and that's you. Just say, yeah, Dr. Nicole, that's me. I can attest to that. Sometimes when people are scared, they may shut down and isolate, meaning that it's not that they're not interested in what someone else is saying, but what someone else may have saying may cause fear in them, and they may shut down and isolate from others. Then there's times when people are excited, they may talk very loud and very fast, and they may be, it may seem like they are in a chaotic state, but it's just because they are so excited and so many things are going on in their mind that they're trying to sort it all out. And then sometimes when people are embarrassed, they may become quiet and they may not say much. And you may be thinking, well, why aren't you responding? Why aren't you answering the questions that I'm answering? Why aren't you trying to forge through this conversation? Maybe it's because they're embarrassed. And so it's important that we spend time reflecting on our responses to others, because that will help us understand how we respond when in certain ways, when we feel certain things, when we think certain things. So if I think that someone is blaming me for a situation, it may definitely respond and impact how I respond to that person. I may pull back. I may get more quiet. I may not call them for a couple of days because I am in a position where I feel shame. I feel guilt. And so this can impact our relationships very deeply. And we want to be able to understand our emotions. God gave them to us, and our emotions are here to stay. There are signals, there are signs. I'm going to repeat something that John Hale, who was on our show last week, I'm going to repeat something that he said, and it's so powerful that behavior is a language. What is it saying? So we've talked about emotional intelligence, and all of us need to work to develop our emotional intelligence. And I gave you some insight as to, when we have emotional intelligence, we are able to determine or able to really understand how we respond to certain emotions in certain situations. So let's bring this into the end of the year. What does this have to do with reflection? Well, people reflect all the time. Some people, when it's coming up to a milestone in their life, maybe when they're graduating from one school and going to another, people may reflect. They may reflect when they hit certain milestones. Maybe when they're buying a house for the first time, they may reflect on the years that they may have spent in an apartment. Let's say when someone is reaching a milestone birthday, like 21 or 50 or 75, they may spend some time right around that event thinking about their life, reviewing the things that have happened to them. And so people reflect all the time. But do we take time to reflect intentionally? And how can intentional reflection improve my mental wellness? Well, the practice of reflection can, first of all, help you gain awareness of how you are feeling. Like I said, a lot of times we are moving so fast through life, we don't sit down and really evaluate, how am I feeling? Sometimes we ask people, how are you doing today? And most people answer, I'm good. We don't give an identifier. We don't say, I'm happy, I'm sad. Most of the time we say, I'm good, or I'm okay, or I'm fine. And a lot of times there is something under that good, that okay, and that fine that we need to begin to connect with. So reflection can help you and me gain an awareness of what I am feeling at this time and in this situation. The practice of reflection can, number two, can also help you process your experiences. What I mean by process, I mean sort it out. Think about it, think it through. A lot of times when things happen, they happen extremely fast. If we think about the coronavirus and how things began to shut down, things shut down so fast that you might not have had time to really sort out the experience of being somewhere and now being sheltered in place. And so reflection can help you process, as we say, or sort through various situations in your life. The next thing that reflection can do is reflection can help you when you are preparing to make decisions for your future. And so we want to take time to reflect, to sit down, to gain awareness of our feelings, to process out our thoughts, to sort our thoughts, because it is our past experiences that speak to our present experience and also to our decisions about the future. So we're here at the end of the year. And I know people, and I myself take an intentional moment at the end of the year to reflect on the things of the year. The end of the year is a time where people all over the world engage in year end reviews, a time of reflection. And so we see this in the financial realm. People reflect on their finances, as we know towards the end of the year is when the books, quote unquote, close on our finances and we start thinking about having to do our taxes. We reflect on academics at the end of the year. For colleges where, even in the college where I work, it's almost the end of the semester. And so grades are going in, and it's a period of a break where students in all ages may be receiving report cards. Academics has a time of reflection. There's also a time of reflection in our news outlets. So I'm always look forward to the end of the year reviews where they highlight the key people that have passed on and have died in the year of 2020, in whatever year it may be. I'm also interested in the fact that even pop culture does a review. And even I believe this is not I believe it's a magazine. I think it might be Time magazine that does a year end review, meaning they dedicate a, a written magazine to highlight with pictures and with stories all of the monumental moments of the year. And so reflection is so important because at the end of the year, things usually slow down for people. We're going into the winter months. The holidays are upon us, which means people may have a day or two or maybe extended days off. So, if there was no other time for you to begin to use this time as a time of reflection, this is the time. Time flies. A few months ago, we were talking about 2020 supervision, a year of knowing what to do, the year of seeing things differently. We had all of these great insights of what was going to happen this year. And now here we are at the end of the year. And because things move so fast, and especially this year, there was so much change and transition. Many of us did not have an opportunity to give an attention to the things that occurred. So on most of people's plates were two topics: the coronavirus and the election. And there were so many other events that happened in this year that were not only just around the coronavirus or the election, but there were good moments, there were sad moments, there were moments that we need to reflect on. So, as we're talking tonight, if you have any questions about reflection, if you have any comments about the ways that this year has changed you, put it in the comment section. We want to hear from you. How has this year changed from you? Maybe as we're going through this, I start going through the steps of how to actually do a reflection on yourself, a self reflection. Maybe this may be your moment. Maybe this may be your opportunity to really begin to process something that you've been brushing past as the year has progressed. So, if you have a topic, if this is really touching you, let's hear your comments. If you have a question, put it in the box and I'll answer it the best way I can. I will give you the answer that I know of. and we will move forward in wellness together. Okay. So let's move into this a little bit deeper. So you're telling me that I need this ability to reflect in order to build my emotional intelligence. But I may be wondering, how do I practice reflection? Is it just me sitting there thinking about yesterday? Or are there actual steps? So let's shine it a light and focus in on how I can practice reflection. How can you practice reflection? First of all, reflection is something that needs to be intentional. We can always think about yesterday, but the type of reflection that I'm talking about is a reflection that at the end should build your mental wellness and your mental capacity to deal with the things that are coming in the future. It's almost like uh, organizing a room that has been flooded or cluttered with so much stuff. So if you think about from January to now, 365 days of events, of experiences, of opportunities, of highs, of lows. All of these have cluttered themselves in your mind, and they're not necessarily organized in any particular category. They just happened. They're just there. And we've been moving so fast and had so much transition this year. You haven't had a breath to take the time to really sit back and to think and to about the things that have happened. So reflection that I'm talking about is intentional, meaning that there is a process to it, there are steps to it, and you're making a commitment that I'm going to take this moment, this time, this opportunity to go through this process called reflection. Now, I want you to know that while we're going through this process called reflection, if you are feeling that it's too much for you, the things that you're thinking about are too painful, that you need support, please stop. Don't continue on. And you can save it for a moment when you feel like you're better able. The good thing about it is this video will be here, and you can even go back and replay the video, replay the parts so that you can walk through these steps. Okay? So let's go. So reflection includes three steps. And I'm going to talk about these three steps individually to give you an idea of how to walk through them. One is looking back. The next one is looking within. And the third one is looking forward. So when we go through working through a reflection or reflecting on things that have occurred, we want to take the time to look back at that situation. We want to take the time to look within, and we want to take the time to look forward. One of my mentors, Bishop Michael Blue, he coined it in a very great way. He said, reflection has to do with hindsight, insight, and foresight. And so we're going to use the premise looking back is hindsight, looking within is insight, and looking forward is foresight. And so we're going to take the time, thank you, Bishop Blue, for that. And we're going to take the time to evaluate how do I go through each of these stages, okay? So let's go. How do I look back? There's been so much that has happened this year. How do I gain hindsight? How do I take a moment to go and to evaluate the things that have happened? And so I see a question that has come in, and it's, so how do I know when I am ready to reflect? Is it when it no longer hurts to think on what has happened? And I will say to you, and we're going to actually talk about it a little bit, that part of the goal of reflection is not just to focus on the feelings that are good, but it's also to reflect on the feelings that make us uncomfortable. Because as we address and as we face those emotions that make us uncomfortable, it is actually strengthening our emotional wellness. It's also strengthening our mental wellness. That now we are able to address not only feelings of happiness, but we are able to address feelings of sadness. And so, when are you ready to reflect? You are ready to reflect in the level as you are able to go on this journey. So, I'm going to talk to you about 3 steps. And you may say, well, Dr. Nicole, I only can do this part. Then anybody is ready to reflect at any time. You don't have to do all of the aspects of reflection in order to be engaging this process. And that's why I said if you feel that something is too painful, then maybe you don't want to reflect on that event. Find something else that you may want to reflect on and start there. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to work our muscles. We're trying to develop the skill and the process of reflection. And then as you begin to reflect on the topics that maybe you want to think about, maybe you will be able to open up yourself to start reflecting on some topics that may be painful, that you may need some support in. Okay. And so that's my suggestion. Start with something that you want to reflect on. Let's build those muscles of reflection. Let's build that strengthening your emotional intelligence, strengthening your ability to manage and what are you going to do when you feel these emotions? And then we'll move on to uncomfortable reflections or reflections of things that are a little bit more painful for you. That would be my suggestion. So, how can you reflect? Okay? How can you get hindsight? You can journal. You can, meaning you can write down your thoughts. And when it's time for reflection, you can reflect by reading your journal, by seeing what you wrote all through the year or in a particular time, whatever time you're reflecting on. You can review pictures. I have an iPhone and I take a lot of pictures of events, of days, of things that my family and I are doing. And so there's times where your phones will do it for you, or you can do it yourself. Go through reflection by looking at pictures of events that happened during the year. The other thing is that you may find that social media is a good way to reflect. A lot of times at the end of the year, social media will give you a year in review. So the first thing you want to do is you want to look back on what has happened and you want to connect with a trusted person. And as you're reflecting, have somebody to talk to about some of those events that happened in the year that really touched you. It could be a loved one, it could be a close friend, and it can even be a licensed and trained mental health professional, a place where you feel safe and comfortable talking about the things that have happened in this year. That's how we start reflection. One thing I do, I have a daily calendar. And sometimes I look back at my business activities. I look back at the things that I had done during the year because I want to remember some of the places I've gone, some of the people I've met, some of the connections that I've made. And so this act of reflection is really taking the time to walk back through your year or whatever time period that you are trying to reflect on. And then the way I want you to do it is as you're reflecting, I want you to categorize where you put things. These are the things that really were good things that happened in my year. These were some of the more painful events that occurred because a lot of times we want to clump things all together and we really need to identify those things that we may need some support in. So let's say, like the question had asked, let's say I have my list of the things that occurred that were really painful. That may be the list that I reflect with someone. That may not be the areas that I do it by myself. I may need a trained professional to talk through some of the difficulties of my year, whether that trained professional is someone who is a licensed counselor or a clergy person or someone else in the field that can give you counsel. But then you may say there are some middle ground areas. Maybe there was a tragedy in my family. Maybe I can talk through this with the people that I love, my family members, because we all experienced it. That may be a way to reflect. And then those joyous moments, you may sit in your house and you may sit and just be satisfied of the accomplishments that you made. Maybe you got a new trophy on the wall. Maybe you got a degree and you just want to sit back and look at that. I can tell you that I remember when I graduated with my doctoral degree, my PhD in 2016. And I was so used to moving really fast, like, oh, I got this, I reached that goal. What's next? What's next? And that's how we operate in our life. But one of my very close friends had told me, like, Nicole, slow down. Reflect on the fact that you have spent 4 years in school earning a doctoral degree. That was a great undertaking. That was something that you should be proud of. Don't brush past it in the hurriness of our life, but take time and reflect the moments that you thought that you weren't going to make it. And even for me, when I was going through my doctoral studies, there was a period where I didn't pass a comprehensive exam. So I was held back a little bit. And having the opportunity to reflect on that. And when we reflect on these things, we need to connect with our emotions. And that's the insight. When we reflect on the situation, that's giving us hindsight, listing those things that happened, listing those events that were monumentous in our year or in the past month or whatever time frame you're reflecting on. But the next thing you need to do is you need to gain hindsight. And the way you look within is when you think about that event, highlight what were your thoughts? What were your feelings? What came to you? What comes to your mind now when you think about what happened back then? So I don't know if there's anyone out there who has tried to achieve something this year. And seemingly, I guess the word you might put with it is failed. You failed. You did not achieve. And maybe you're feeling sad about it. You might even be feeling a little depressed about it. You might be feeling a little ashamed. And you might be feeling a little guilt because you have told people, this is what I'm going to do, but you weren't able to achieve it in this year. That is something that you can reflect on. And some may say, Nicole, why am I going to reflect on something is that going to remind me how bad I am? Remind me of the fact that I failed or remind me of the fact that I didn't complete it? And I will say to you, it's going to help you recognize the thoughts and the feelings that might have been the reason why you didn't complete the things that you had assigned or you had set out to do. And so when you highlight your thoughts and your feelings that you have, you might remember it like this. I remember being so angry when that happened. I said to myself, forget it. And so when you start identifying your thoughts and your feelings, that's looking within. That's beginning to understand this situation happened and this is how I felt about it. This situation happened and this is what I thought about it. And a lot of times, because like I said, we move so fast, we don't give ourselves the opportunity to really reflect on what I think about the things that have happened to me this year and what I feel about the things that have happened to me this year. Allow yourself to sit. We don't like to sit in our feelings, but allow yourself to sit in your feelings, even if they are uncomfortable, because this is the way that we learned how to face and not avoid and not run away. When we learn to sit in our emotions, we begin to become the captain of our emotions. We begin to, with support, with help, with this process of reflection, we begin to recognize that, I was avoiding that sadness. I didn't want to. I hear people say all the time when they talk about grief, I don't want to cry. But I recognize that tears are given to me as as a release in my body, as a release in my mind, as a release in my emotions. And so I would encourage you that while you are looking at hindsight, looking behind you, I would encourage you not to stop there. Don't just look at the situations. I want you to sit in those feelings. Yes, sitting in your feelings is like standing up to the big bad wolf called fear. Yes, thank you so much. That is so true. When you sit in your feelings, you are saying to that signaling that is given to you, that is God given for you to be able to identify and to know that something needs to be addressed. Something is it has happened. And these emotions that I'm feeling right now are letting me know that something has happened in my life. And so there's times where people are afraid to feel sadness. But it's at the time when we are feeling sadness that we may be more considering of what might I do the next time, or how might I act the next time I have an opportunity. And a lot of times we are afraid of moving into that. We are afraid in pressing into that. And so I would encourage you to learn. Children need to learn how to sit in their emotions. Teenagers, adults, we need to learn how to sit, meaning not. I know some people say, well, Nicole, are you talking about staying stuck? No, we're not talking about staying stuck. We're talking about a process. We're talking about hindsight, which moves into insight. And so when I'm not going to stay in insight though, I'm not going to stay just feeling and feeling and feeling and feeling. I'm feeling for a reason. I'm addressing these emotions for a reason. I'm becoming aware of my thoughts and my feelings for a reason. Face it. Don't avoid it. Because a lot of times when people avoid emotions, they do not go away, but they fester underneath. And they usually keep festering and festering and festering until a lot of times there is an explosion. And they could have been handled because the emotions were there from the beginning of the event that we experienced. So let's move on. You may say, Dr. Cole, so first we talked about hindsight. So looking back over this year, what are the things that happen? I can categorize them if it's easier for me. I can wait until I'm around someone trusted to talk about the things that seem very difficult for me to reflect on. I don't want to open any doors that's going to cause me immense emotional pain that I am not able to manage by myself. So I will wait for those areas. Maybe I will start with the areas that I feel joyous about, I feel happiest about, I feel okay in processing, and then I will start reflecting on those. I will categorize them. I'll write them down, whether I'm reviewing my journal, I'm reviewing pictures. And as I am going through this year, as I am going and reflecting and looking back in hindsight, I'm taking a moment to breathe. I'm taking a moment to say, wow, I didn't realize how devastating that was. When and I can say this, like when I saw the video of George Floyd being killed, wow, it really made me sad. And sad because I didn't believe or didn't think that could happen this year. That could happen in our current society. And so, as I recognize my thoughts and my feelings, I understand some of my responses to people, some of the ways that I have responded in certain situations because I am feeling pain or I am thinking about and I'm having a moment thinking about a situation and I'm responding to that situation. Someone said, ask, should reflection always have an action after it? And I will say, yes, that's the third part of this. And that is foresight. Because once you have hindsight and once you have insight, that insight is going to propel you to move forward. Whether you recognize or consciously say, oh, I'm going to do this differently, just the fact that you've evaluated and reflected on your situation is going to shift you in your mind, your heart, and your emotions. I've had a lot of people tell me that, when I felt that and I really was able to put a label to that emotion, it just totally opened up things for me. All this while, I was feeling something. I didn't know exactly what I was feeling until I put a label on it. And once I was able to put a label on how I was feeling about this situation that happened 5 months ago, then I was able to move forward in how I was going to respond. Now, it happened 6 months ago, but now I'm sitting here and I didn't realize I'm still angry. And I'm still trying to move forward. I'm trying to ignore it. I'm trying to press past it. But I'm still angry. And so by giving that hindsight, recognizing the situations, categorizing them, and then taking some time for that insight, really thinking about what do I think about what happened? What did I feel when I felt what happened? Then we can move into foresight. When I think about events that happen and my feelings, and how I responded in that moment, because that's a part of my hindsight, recognizing how I responded to that event in the moment, I can ask myself, is there anything I reward myself for doing? Now, this question it takes a little bit of thought because a lot of times I find that we blame ourselves. We mentally turn the negative light on ourselves, and we say, oh my goodness, it was my fault that happened, or I could have done this better, or I could have done that better. But in this process of reflection, yes, you're going to evaluate things you could have done better. But the first thing I want us to evaluate when we're reflecting on a situation, and after we reflect on our thoughts and our feelings, our emotions, I want you to reflect on what did you do good? What did you do well? What did you do in that situation that showed that you didn't just throw caution to the wind, but you had a response and a reaction because of who you are, what you've been through, where you are, and you should reward yourself. Listen, I might not have used the best words, but I'm glad I stood up to that person. I might not have done it the best way, but I'm glad that I said what I didn't like. We can we can work on how can I respond better the next time, but for some people, just the fact that they open their mouth is something to reward yourself for. So I want you in your scenario, in your situation, as you're reflecting, going through this process, I want you to think about is there anything that I can reward myself for doing? And I want you to acknowledge that. And then as we go through this last thing, this foresight, this planning for the future, the next thing I want you to do is there anything, ask yourself, is there anything I would have liked to have done better? Was there something that I could have done to improve my situation, to improve my thoughts, to improve my feelings, to improve what happened? The first thing I want you to do is to reward yourself for the things you did well. And then I want you to shift to think about what are some things I could do better? Because I believe the largest room in the world is the room for improvement. And while I may have done 10 things well, there may be an 11th thing that I may want to try in 2021. And the last thing I want you to reflect as we're doing foresight, as we're planning for our future, the last thing is, are there any people or is there any support I may need the next time this situation comes up in my life? One thing 2020 is teaching us is that once again, the unexpected can come up in your life. And you may have looked at your finances in this year, and you may have said, I thought I was doing good with my budget, but the surprise of 2020 taught me maybe next year, while I have a budget and I stuck to it, and I'm grateful for that. I pat myself on the back for having a budget and for sticking to it. But as I look forward, I see that maybe my budget was not as tight as it should have been. Maybe my budget wasn't as aggressive as I should have had it. And so now I'm saying to myself, well, next year, maybe I want to enlist my family members even more. Maybe I want to go to a financial planner. Maybe I want to connect with others. And this is because these situations and circumstances and our emotional responses to them impact our mental wellness. The ways, if we're having situations and events that occur over and over again, okay, like a budget, like a healthy lifestyle, like my work schedule. These are things that are consistent year in and year out. Children going to school. Maybe you have events in your family that happen every year. By doing this process of reflection, you can begin to plan. How can things work out better for me? Are there things I can plan for because they are repeated events? Are they things that I can get some hindsight, some insight about? And now it'll give me greater foresight for planning for next year. Let's say you're a business person, you're an entrepreneur. You can use this process of reflection to evaluate your business for this year and yourself as a leader. How did I do? What were those situations that came up in my company that gave me pause? What were those situations when coronavirus hit? How did it impact my business? And now I'm sitting here looking back on how quickly things shifted, how my contracts may have shifted. Either they grew or they might have lessened, or people were asking for different things. I had to now quickly go from face-to-face work to online. That's hindsight. And then talk about the insight as a business owner. How anxious were you? How sad did it make you knowing that you had to lay off some people? How did you feel about the whole shift of the environment of the work that you do? Were you tired most of the year? Evaluation is so important. Thank you, Azure. Yes, evaluation is so important. And this reflective process is not just for people and thinking about, your home and your children. It's also thinking about your business. And so how can we use this reflective process across the several areas of our life? Think about in this process of foresight, what are the things I would like to do next year? Because I've evaluated my year. I've evaluated the things that happened this year. And I don't want to stop there. I don't want to just make a list and say this happened and that happened and the other. I want to do something with that list. I want to look at my thoughts and my feelings. I want to connect with the inside of me. Excuse me. I want to connect with what I was feeling in those moments, the most difficult moments of my year. But I don't want to stop right there. I want to go on and start saying to myself, there were some things I did well. I'm going to give myself credit. There are some things I can improve on. That's always present. And there may be some people I need to pull in to support me, to help me manage the things that I might face next year. Some things are going to be a repetitive cycle. Some things are going to be brand new, just like this year brought many brand new things. But some things, my friends, should be planned. Some, just like I'm telling you, to spend time to intentionally reflect. I'm also hoping that in this time of reflection, you are also going to be planning for next year. So, what are some things that I want to do next year? 2021 is right around the corner. And I want you to ask yourself, how can I use this process of reflection to help me prepare and break down barriers? So, as you're going through this process of reflection, there may be some emotions that you're recognizing. Like I said, that emotional intelligence, there may be some emotions that you are recognizing were problematic for you. When you felt sad, you disconnected. And that caused a lag in your ability to get things done. When you got frustrated, you gave up, which means that project that you were trying to do this year didn't quite make it to the completion. And now you're feeling sad and you're blaming yourself. My friend, I'm telling you, in this time of reflection, it's time to look back, look within, and then come on, let's look forward. We're about to go into a new year, and we can't undo the things of this year. But we can use the information from this year to be the launch pad for 2021. And so, what are the things that you're planning for next year? And how can you use this process of reflection to help you break down barriers? This is the process of reflection. So let's go over it again before I give you your action steps for today. The first thing you want to do is, once again, reflection is, you know, I want to look at something deeply. I want to look at something intentionally. I want to look, reflect. It's like a mirror. A mirror shows one part, a mirror shows exactly what is shined into it. And so basically, when you're reflecting, you're looking at you, and you're looking at you to see what is inside. You're looking at you to see where you are mentally and emotionally. You're looking at you to see how can you go into mental wellness. What baggage did you pick up in 20 that needs to stay, and you need to go on in 2021 to some new things. And so I want you to take the time to reflect, whether it's a moment, whether it's an hour, whether it's days. Reflect, reflect, reflect. And so we talked about the three stages of reflection: hindsight, insight, foresight. Hindsight is looking back over the year, looking back to the events, categorizing them. What events were good? What events were not so good? What events were painful? What events were helpful? What events do I want to happen again? What events would I really wish they wouldn't happen again? And then look within. For all of those events that occurred, slow it down. Because I'm sure with all of the transition of this year, some events happened and you were not able to really think about what you were thought about those emotions and those situations that happened, rather. So take the moment to feel, sit in those feelings. I know it may cause some tears to come back up, it may cause some thoughts to come back up. If you're able to do it by yourself, then I would encourage you to do it by yourself. But if you have a trusted friend, do it with a friend. If you are working with a therapist or a faith leader or someone that you have a designated conversation with, they are your support person, do it with them. But take time to reflect and to think through the things that have happened. And then once you have that hindsight and insight, now it's time to move forward into your next year. And so I'm going to leave you tonight. Embrace, yes, Gregory, embrace the emotions because they're not going anywhere. Whether you deal with them or don't deal with them. Yes, Azure, deal with your emotions right now because they're not going away. But dealing with what you are feeling can help you and propel you into a more positive and a mentally well 2021. And so, how can I use reflection to help my mental wellness in 2021. These are our action steps. These are the things that I want you to leave with. I showed you how to go through the process of reflection. And now here is what I want to tell you and what I want to leave you with. Write these down. I want you to reflect often. One of the things I found out about reflection is that reflection is an art. It takes practice to really reflect, really sit down and feel and think and plan and move on. And so the more we practice how to reflect on situations that occur in our life, the more it will become innate to us. And so I would ask you to set a time daily or set a time weekly to reflect. Some people will take their time first thing in the morning, they reflect. Some people reflect at the end of the day. And the way people reflect at the end of the day, they may say, 3 things I did well, 3 things I would like to improve. The way people reflect over their week, they may say, this was my high and this was my low. They're all different ways to reflect, but this will help you mentally not just be a zombie through life, but be an active participant, a living, feeling, emotional being as you already are. And so on your trip home from work or school, on the weekend, be intentional and set some time aside to reflect. I find that when I spend time reflecting on things that have occurred, I gain such awareness about myself, awareness about what is happening around me, my responses to them, why I acted the way that I did, whether I was happy about my actions or not so happy about my actions. Reflecting kind of helps me bear it out. So be intentional with your reflection. Reflect often. And number two, I want you, the action step number two is reflect on different things. Sometimes we like to focus just on the good. But the good things are not all the time the things that cause us the most problems. It's the things that we avoid. It's the things that we shy away from. It's those emotions that we don't want to face. Like Azure had said, it's those issues that we don't want to deal with. Those are the things that usually trip us up in the future. And so I'm saying to you, don't only reflect on the joys of the year, but reflect on the things that were problematic. And while you're reflecting on those things that are problematic, it may help you build your problem solving skills. You may find that where before you were not able to reflect on different situations, yes, Eunice, be intentional to reflect. And once we are intentional with our reflection, and as we're thinking on the things that went well, the things that I need to improve on, I may find myself mentally making lists. And the next thing I want you to do as you're going into 2021, this is one of the most important things that I'm going to say tonight. Reflect before making a major decision. This will help you to give a full exploration before you move. Like I said, a lot of times things happen so fast that we don't take the time to reflect, to think it through, to think about what has happened, to think about what I'm feeling, to recognize that my emotions are giving me signals that maybe I need to pay attention to before moving forward. So reflect before making a major decision. Reflection may help you make that decision. A lot of times we may be at a stalemate. We may be stuck. We may not even realize that we are stuck, but our emotions have stopped us. Our emotions have said, "I'm afraid. I don't want to do this." And it may be something that we need to do. The time may be right. And so I encourage you before you make a major decision, reflect. Reflect. We're at the end of the year. 2020 is over, and I've seen so many Facebook posts And so many people talking about, oh, I'm so glad that 2020 is ending. I can't wait to get out of this year. Oh, my goodness, we'll forget everything. We're going to leave everything behind. But I don't want you to leave 2020 without considering how 2020 has changed you, how the situations of surprise, the things we didn't expect, the losses that we've had. We need to take a moment, and I encourage you in this last month to take the time to reflect on this year. Take the time to gain that hindsight, that insight, and that foresight. That you can strengthen your skills and emotional intelligence, that you can tune into yourself, which will help you tune into others as you go into 2021. And as you go into the next year, go in with that plan. You may say, Nicole, in 2020, I recognized that every time I got angry and frustrated, I threw away a project. But now I've been reflecting on it, and I credit myself for starting the project. But I got to get better with finishing. I got to get better with not allowing frustration to hinder me. And so for 2021, I am deciding that I'm going to break that project down in smaller pieces so I don't get so frustrated. And then I'm going to pull some of my friends in so that if I get frustrated and my mind gets bogged down and I start to become hopeless and saying, I can't do this, I'm going to call one of my friends. I'm going to make a plan. And I'm going to pull some people in so that my 2021, I will complete. Maybe I'll join a motivation group. Maybe I will connect with my family. Maybe I'll call my prayer partner and say, listen, I'm dealing with this, but I won't know what I need if I don't reflect on what I've done. And so, friends, this year, before this year is out, reflection, intentional, purposeful, reflect so that you can move forward into 2021 with a plan. Well, I could sit here all night and talk about reflection. The time has really flown today because this is something I could talk about so much. But I'm hoping tonight that you will spend the time reflecting on this year. And that as you propel yourself into the next year, that you will have a plan of entering 2021 in a place of mental wellness. Think of reflection as your checkup. And once you're finished reflecting, you may realize that you need some help outside of yourself. You may be reflecting on the things that you did well, the things that your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings, and you may realize, Nicole, I need help. And I would encourage you, if you need help, reach out and call Suicide Prevention Hotline if that's what you need. Call your primary care physician if that's what you need. Go to a mental health provider if that's what you need. In this time of reflection, some of you may come out of this reflection recognizing that there's some issues that you have not dealt with, and that's been hindering you. And you're going to make the giant leap. You're going to make that step and get the help that you need, that you can go into 2021 in a mentally well place. Well, friends, for the past 8 weeks, it has been my pleasure in supporting you through the Headshots podcast with Dr. Nicole. Our season 1 is over. We're going to take a little break, enjoy our holiday. We're going to prepare, and we will be back in February with the next season of the Headshots podcast. But don't worry, we are not going to leave you alone. While we're preparing for the next season, we'll be connecting with you on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, And we will be on YouTube. We will be reaching out and connecting with you. As always, we are here to help you. We're here to support you. It's our desire that you be mentally well. It is our desire that you get the help that you need. We so appreciate you. If you're in the live audience, thank you to my live audience, supporters that have been here. If you're in the replay audience, thank you so much. We will see you in a few short weeks, and we will be ready to go back at the topics that are going to help change your look and your outlook. This is Dr. Nicole Johnson. Enjoy your holiday season, and I'll see you in 2021.